Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our tonight's public hearings and virtual meeting. I would like to start off tonight with a moment of silence in memory of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, and North Carolina native George Floyd, and the countless others who have lost their lives to police violence. If we could all take a moment, bow our heads. Okay, thank you, everyone. I would like to acknowledge that Raleigh PAC members are outside the municipal building engaged in a peaceful protest. And it's also my understanding that they will be presenting several demands in the future. We will be reviewing these. And I also want to assure them that we recognize that it is time for action. To that end, I just want to mention a few things that the City Council did today. We have approved a virtual community meeting for Thursday at 7 p.m. to hear your voices. We also will receive an internal review of the police and staff response to the protests, especially this weekend. We also approved racial equity training for the City Council at today's meeting. And previously, we approved a police advisory board, but we will be appointing members to that board in 2 weeks. Obviously, all of this is very timely, especially when you consider the moment we're in. There was a lot of discussion at today's City Council meeting talking about the importance of not forgetting the cause of the protest, keeping things in our memory, taking the call to action, and not letting the violence and the destruction that occurred cloud the importance of those views. So with that, I am going to start tonight's meeting. We have several people, 15 people signed up for public comment. I want to remind everybody about the rules of decorum. Please be kind. We are here to all work together. As we have seen in the past 3 days, attacks don't work. Working together does. And with that in mind, we will begin the meeting and our public comment period. First on our list is Donna Bailey.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name's Donna Bailey, 710 Rosemont Avenue. I want to share this video that the Raleigh City staff made about CACs. I'm not sure all of you have seen it. It's an excellent video. Even with any perceived problems with the CACs, it is much better than no citizen representative group right now, which is what the city of Raleigh has, nothing. Notice that the CAC leadership is elected by their own residents, not appointed. Please reinstate CACs until you have a replacement, which will be over a year. Please show the video. Okay, you can unmute that now.
If you live in Raleigh, you're automatically a member of one of these councils. The city of Raleigh has 18 CACs, each representing a different geographic region of the city. Each CAC elects its own officers and decides its own activities and priorities. You can attend as an individual, or you can represent your neighborhood-based organization at your CAC meetings. All meetings are open to everyone. However, you can only vote at meetings at the CAC where you reside. CACs are nonpartisan. They're the only advisory boards to the City Council not appointed by the Council. Raleigh's CACs are a connecting point between municipal government and residents. They provide a way for the city to share information about government activities and to receive feedback from the community. Through CACs, residents and neighborhood groups participate in decisions directly affecting them. For instance, CACs have a voice in planning and development issues. Most proposals for rezoning property go before a local CAC for review. Often a person seeking rezoning will appear before the CAC to discuss the proposal. Each CAC holds regular meetings and everyone is welcome to attend. The meetings provide a forum to share information about neighborhood improvement plans and other neighborhood issues. City council members sometimes attend CAC meetings to talk about items before the council. City staffers often appear at CAC meetings to give updates on projects or discuss how the city can assist with different services each department offers. Police representatives usually attend to discuss crime trends and offer crime prevention tips. All neighborhood-based organizations, such as neighborhood and homeowner associations, are encouraged to send representatives to CAC meetings and share information about the CAC proceedings with their members. It's important that every neighborhood have representation at CAC meetings because broader input leads to better decision-making.
There's 23 seconds left on the clock. Is there anything else? Ms. Bailey? Okay. We'll start the clock again. This time we have Frederick Turner speaking.
Hello?
Hello.
I can proceed?
You sure can. Thank you. And the timer is on the virtual podium.
Hello, City Council and residents. My name is John Frederick Turner. I reside at 6 North Bloodworth Street here in Raleigh. I present this dialogue by first injecting the name of my father, Frank Lewis Turner. My father sat on the council I'm addressing in the early 1980s. He was one of the at-large councilmen. Mayor Baldwin made it clear in her campaign that she wanted to eliminate Raleigh Citizen Advisory Council. The campaign promise made by Councilor Melton to the voters of Raleigh in order to gain their support was, I support CACs. Some of the most civically engaged citizens participate in CACs. The City Council should work more widely to promote CAC meetings and explain their purpose, and to make them more welcome to newcomers. Councilor Melton never once said anything about abolishing CACs. He talked about improving them. Certainly, if he had changed his position after being elected, he should have discussed it with the voters through public hearings instead of plotting in secret with other councilors to abolish the CACs in a move that Indy Week described as follows. This time, they want to get it done without a fight and without having to deal with a bunch of angry people that they consider cranks. Forgetting who pays their salaries and that dealing with angry cranks is part of the job description, this is always going to carry a stink that won't wash off. Nowadays, it seems that many politicians will promise me exactly what I wish to hear. That's during the campaign. I believe a change of heart does not occur overnight without some divine persuasion or the human kind, favors or cash. Was the CAC a wrong voice for Raleigh's residents? Was there 40-plus years of wrong things? How was it deemed detrimental to Raleigh? Detrimental enough to disband without debate, without consultation of the community. It's the people, not the developers' buildings, that make Raleigh attractive not only to those coming in, but also to the older souls that made it what it is. Yes, I call Raleigh a big country town. Whoever wants to turn it into a metropolis has no idea of the heartache that will eventually be forcibly injected, whether you like it or not. to have not hired a consultant, done the research, had the virtual council apparatus in place, Raleigh's heart is open to knives that will cut neighborhoods and communities up. Don't allow greed to gleam brighter than charm.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Next, we have John Lambert. Is Mr. Lambert on the line?
I believe he was. No, you know what? I do not think I could ever get him. I think I tried 2 times, and I was not able to get him.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Keller Wright.
I have not seen her dial into the meeting.
Okay, next we have Chantel Miles.
We do have her.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name is Chantel Miles, and I live at 3408 Sioux Drive in Raleigh's District A. Patrick Buskin is my city council representative, and I would like to take this opportunity to publicly comment on his vote on February 4th in support of dismantling Raleigh's Citizen Advisory Councils, also referred to as CACs. In Patrick Buskin's campaign to become the representative for District A, he told Indy Weekly, "The CACs are a good way to foster citizen engagement, although I would support improvements where there is consensus to make CACs more effective. For example, considering the relative size of CACs across the city and using technology to allow more citizens to participate in these meetings." To be clear, Patrick Buskin never once said anything about dismantling the CAC. Instead, as a candidate, he showed support for them and talked about building consensus on ways to make them more effective. Yet, as we all know, Patrick Buskin quickly changed his position shortly after winning the election. I am shocked that he neither made this change known to the public, nor did he elicit the public's feedback before taking action. There is an alarming discrepancy between what Patrick Buskin said about the CACs during his campaign and his vote as an elected official to dismantle them. This discrepancy comes across as a political bait and switch in a process that can be best described in the Indy Weekly's words as carrying a stink that won't wash off. It has been 4 months, and I assure you, the stink has not worn off. Even worse, our city is in turmoil after a weekend of impassioned protests over the murder of another unarmed person of color at the hands of law enforcement officers. Now, more than ever, Raleigh needs to come together, but how can it? With the exception of David Cox and Quarry Branch, this council has disempowered the community by taking away its main forum for engagement, the CAC, and there does not appear to be a replacement in sight. This is absolutely unacceptable. For the sake of healing Raleigh and giving its citizens a voice in its government, I urge you to reinstate the CACs without delay until you are able to provide a publicly vetted replacement.
Thank you. Next, we have Zainab Baloch.
She did not connect in.
Okay, next we have Cameron Nelms.
Also did not get them connected.
Okay, Richard Johnson.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Richard Johnson, 3225 Oak Grove Circle. Our mayor was asleep on the job Saturday night while Raleigh was burning. Add that to her growing list of failures. You would think that having served 10 years on council would give us a mayor equipped to deal with big issues, but she's failed us repeatedly, letting heavily armed white supremacists march freely downtown while heavily policing nonviolent protesters, letting a private developer, John Kane, lobby for a huge rezoning proposal during a council retreat, stifling citizen engagement by disbanding the CACs, leaving 5 vacancies on the Human Relations Commission while she reviews the mission, purging the Planning Commission of non-developer approved members, failing to involve the community in planning for an affordable housing market, failing to get a robust police review board set up. I could go on and on. Maybe Mary Ann is finding it too overwhelming to be Raleigh's mayor, as well as the new head of business development for Barnhill Contracting Company. Barnhill is a major builder, road paver, etc., in Raleigh and all of North Carolina, and there is no way she can separate her position as mayor and her position to drum up a business for Barnhill. And if that's not bad enough, the mayor has repeatedly voted to give Barnhill many millions of dollars in contracts over the years, including as recently as March of this year. Right after that March vote, she was offered this job from Barnhill, salary unknown. Wonder if it's on commission for any business she brings their way. Wonder how that works when she votes to spend our taxpayer dollars to incentivize a business to come to Raleigh or to expand here. This mayor shows no judgment in separating her public responsibility from personal enrichment. How can any impartial person think this arrangement isn't a monumentally bad decision? It looks like a classic case of pay to play. Mayor Baldwin should resign immediately, as she will never be able to vote on any Raleigh project that involves rezoning, building, construction, roads, or even sidewalks without having a conflict of interest, since it is always likely that Barnhill could be involved at some point. Mayor Baldwin and her puppets on council have already shown that they're the council of a developer's dream, but this is over the top. So, Mayor Baldwin, time to decide. Do you work for Raleigh or for Barnhill? It can't be both. My vote is that you resign and go to work full-time for Barnhill. That way you can leave Raleigh's governance in the hands of a mayor who truly cares about all Raleigh residents and who doesn't sleep while the city burns. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Now we have Jordan Zhang.
Hello, my name is Jordan John. I'm 17 and I live at 4818 Home Place Drive. This statement was constructed by myself and Caroline Butler on behalf of the Young Americans protest. In light of recent events, we believe it is our responsibility as citizens to stand in solidarity with Black communities that have been ravaged by systemic oppression at the hands of law enforcement. The lynching of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officers has motivated us to seek institutional change in our community, best achieved by outlining our visions of a safer city of Raleigh. Law enforcement is intended to be a system of protection and trust, but these values have been undermined by recurring hostility between police officers and constituents, particularly people of color. Across the country, we have seen countless examples of police brutality against Black and Brown individuals. Raleigh is not immune to this violence. This January, the Raleigh Police Department used excessive force on Raleigh Andres Batista Concepcion, including beating and kneeing. The aggression stemmed from a suspected traffic violation, an incident that would result in no more than a minor citation for a white person. Batista Concepcion's case was not an isolated incident. On March 10, 2020, the Raleigh Police Department shot Javier Torres, a man whose only offense was loitering and carrying a pizza box. The RPD has a long history of excessive brutality against Black communities of color. We believe it is the utmost importance that changes are made to ensure that no further occurrences of police brutality occur in Raleigh. We express these demands on behalf of the organization Young Americans Protest, and our objectives align with those of Raleigh Demands Justice. We demand an amendment to the Raleigh Police Department written directives that would focus on preventing the over-policing of Black communities. Bordered by historically Black neighborhoods, police stations in downtown Raleigh have been constructed within mere miles of each other. To reduce the heavy presence of police officers in Black and Brown communities, we call for the Raleigh City Council to close stations in close proximity to each other. We demand public access to records involving police use of physical discipline in the instance of an internal investigation. The public has the right to transparency of violence against its people, especially in the case that the attack was inflicted by authorities. We demand the resignation of Mayor Mary Ann Baldwin from her employment at Barnhill Construction Company. In the past week, Baldwin became Barnhill's Director of Business Development for the Triangle. Taking on this job takes away Baldwin's focus from leading, which is imperative given the climate of Raleigh.
So Jordan, you were speaking on behalf of yourself and Caroline Butler?
Yes. And
Okay.
Caroline Butler is also signed up to speak.
Okay. Can we set the clock? Caroline?
Hi, my name is Caroline Butler, and I live at 194 Amberwood Run, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And I'm continuing the statement that Jordan started on behalf of Young Americans Protest. We demand the immediate prohibition of physical escalation and violence as a means of disciplinary action. Ideally, de-escalation methods should always be prioritized before ever progressing to physical restraint methods. However, if that fails, we believe that if an officer is close enough to an individual to strike them with a fist, they are close enough to utilize a less forceful method of restraint that is less likely to result in lasting injury, for example, handcuffs. We demand that a specific protocol is put in place for instances of individuals resisting restraint. The RPD written directives leave too many decisions of when and what methods of force are appropriate up to the officer's discretion. The subjective nature of existing protocol creates a high risk of unreasonable force and the potential for unjustified injury or death. We demand the Raleigh City Council to pass local restrictions that would limit the use of military weapons by Raleigh police officers. The militarization of police departments further erodes the trust that should exist between residents and the police who serve them. Emergencies and terrorism are real concerns for our communities, but departments should not rely on military equipment and tactics to respond to everyday problems or peaceful protests. This includes the recent protests in Raleigh, which have been intended from the start to be peaceful. Lastly, we demand the Raleigh City Council to never again vote to increase funding for the sole purpose of the militarization of law enforcement. Rather than investing in the RPD, we call for the Raleigh City Council to instead relocate funds towards essential community services and programs that would work to actively address the underlying causes of crime. These safety solutions include violence prevention, affordable housing, public health solutions, protection for low-wage workers, and adequate responses to mental health and drug crises. It is important for us to acknowledge that neither of us are Black. Therefore, we have not experienced the personal harm Black communities face as a result of abuse of law enforcement. However, these demands reflect issues we have observed and that have been directly communicated to us by Black organizers. Our goal in asserting these objectives is not to speak for the Black community, but to serve as an allied voice that aligns with the concerns they have expressed, many of which have been continuously ignored by government authorities. In constructing an effective framework for public safety, we urge you to respond to these demands to redefine the law enforcement system as a system of protection and trust rather than one of violence and racial bias. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Next, we have Douglas Johnson.
Good evening. I'm Douglas Johnston, 120 Forest Road.
Douglas, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
Is this better?
No.
Is this better? Not better.
No. Maybe just speak a little louder.
Okay, is this better?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, sir.
Well, it's one of those things of getting my face in the microphone.
Can we restart this time?
Yeah, I'll keep track of that. Necessary. Yep, go on.
Yeah, you have a picture of Dix Park and you're saying, what's the Dix Park picture have to do with this moment? Well, I'm not sure, but Dix Park is a transformative moment like the current one. And we're getting Dix Park right for some of the same reasons that we're going to address the current one. Listening, training, advice. Look at what we did at Dix Park. We listened to the community. We had neighbor land, web portal, meetings, thousands of contributions, hundreds of ideas. We assembled the right people, the city staff, Kate Pierce, the advocacy of Sean Malone and the Dix Conservancy, the Master Plan Executive Committee, advisory groups, Michael Van Valkenburg, professional practice and training for us, knowledgeable and influential people in the community were brought together to tackle the problem. And we got it right by doing it right, systematically and structurally, led by community feelings and expertise. We now are past the Dix Park wish list with the master plan and on to the formidable to-do list to carry it out. A park for everyone, built by everyone. We may also want a police department for everyone, built for one. And Dix Park is showing we can do it. Thanks for getting such a great start on listening and training and listening to your advisory board.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Okay, next we have Natalie Liu.
It should be a slide. Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
My name is Natalie Liu, and I live on Ebenezer Church Road in Raleigh, North Carolina. Okay, so we're on slide 2. That's a good one. A few weeks ago, I learned that the Reedy Creek entrance to Umstead State Park off of Harrison Avenue was the African-American entrance during the time of segregation. That's in the lower right corner. I've been using that entrance since 1980 when my family moved to this area, never hearing of this important history until now, 40 years later. For a significant period of time, Umstead State Park used to be 2 parks, one for whites, the Crabtree Creek off of Glenwood, one for blacks, Reedy Creek off of Harrison. Reedy Creek State Park was the only state park where African Americans could go. The Reedy Creek entrance was proposed to be closed in the 70s. Wakestone supported this closure as they already had their claws in that area, ultimately starting the Triangle Quarry operations in 1981. Fortunately, this entrance remained open and it is now very popular and used by a diverse group of citizens in race, gender, age, and income level, and other things. Another thing I learned within the past week is that the state park system wanted to acquire the private land where the current Triangle Quarry is located, but basically the big money of Wakestone Corporation beat out the resources of our state park system. The Constellation Prize for the state park system, and one of the primary reasons the Triangle Quarry permit was granted after being initially denied, was the sunset clause. The state park system would have first right of refusal on the land no more than 50 years. Now, Wakestone is reneging on their initial agreement to close the Triangle Quarry in 2031, and they're attempting to create a new quarry pit on Oddfellows, another tract of land with significant history, like hosting Boy Scout camping outings for decades until about 2017, when RDUA forced them to stop. So the Oddfellows, the Reedy Creek entrance itself, and the Reedy Creek side of Umstead State Park have significant history. Why harm this? Wakestone management has imprisoned this historical Reedy Creek entrance for several decades with a mining operation, and they're doing their darndest to increase that sentence. By allowing Wakestone to continue quarry operations on the Triangle Quarry and to create a new pit on Oddfellows, you are partaking in harming significant African American history. This land is not trash land. This land is a major asset, having not only significant recreation value, but very significant historic value. The African American history of this area needs to be preserved and not swept under the rug. The Reedy Creek entrance and that side of the state park deserve many historic markers, and not to be an ugly dust bowl frequented by trucks that throw rocks and break windshields. Due to significant public interest, DEQ will hold a public hearing. Given you are owner of this land, as per the deed, please ask NCDEQ to reinstate the sunset clause on Triangle Quarry, private land next to Umstead State Park, which will help preserve the significant African American history. Also ask NCDEQ deny quarry pit on the Oddfellows, that's public land deeded in part to you, which would help preserve the history of that area. Thank you. And that's actually next slide, slide 3.
Okay, thank you. And last we have, last but not least, Hua Hong.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello.
we can.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Dear Raleigh Council, my name is Hua Huang, 7401 Ebenezer Church Road, Raleigh, 27612. I'm the group chair for the Capital Group Sierra Club, and I'm here to talk to you about the proposed new Wakestones Quarry next to Olmsted State Park. In recent update, the NCDEQ has announced a public hearing date for Wakestones proposed quarry on June 23, 2020, with no attempt for delay in response to recent events. On behalf of the Capital Group, I ask that the City Council to submit a statement resolution to the DEMLR at the NC mining program to deny Wakestone's mining permit due to its impact on 1, water, wetlands, and news river buffer; 2, the inadequate coverage of Wakestone's current industrial stormwater permit for the expanded quarry, and lack of intended stormwater coverage for potential new quarry; 3, noise and vibration to the park; 4, the inadequate reclamation plan concerning post-mining users, especially in areas closer to the park. Additionally, one of our local Capital Group member and former Vice Chair, Elizabeth Adams, had come across information regarding history of segregation and racial justice issues surrounding Olmsted State Park. The Capital Group has recently submitted a letter requesting DEQ to conduct an environmental justice snapshot report surrounding the area of the park. While DEQ has final say on the matter, anyone can email to inform DEQ on the environmental detriment that the quarry would have on Olmsted State Park. Therefore, I respectfully urge the City Council to join the public and other elected officials during this DEQ about environmental impact the quarry would have on State Park and call for denial of mining permit. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we will go to matters scheduled for public hearing. The first, yes.
This is
Clerk.
Gail. Yes, I have several written comments that were received after the deadline to speak on Friday, but timely today. And these written comments will become a part of the record and have been or are being submitted to you for the file. I'm going to summarize it. Excuse me?
I said thank you.
Okay. The first one is Sarah Jeroma 5920. I'm sorry I murdered that. 5920 Crepe Myrtle Court believes Mayor Baldwin has created a conflict of interest by accepting employment with Barnhill Contracting Company. He would like to see the mayor succeed, but encourages her to seek other employment while she is mayor. The second one came from Will Marks of District C, who voiced support for the CAC system as a means of community engagement and believes that the CACs provide benefits to all of Raleigh stakeholders. Mr. Marks disagrees with the council's withdrawal of support from the CACs. Siri O'Day submitted comments in opposition to the city's curfew as she feels it will cause damage and further isolation. David Stratton, 4907 Rembert Drive, stated his concerns that Councilman David Knight made statements during his campaign that were supportive of the CACs, but then voted to abolish them after elected. And those will be a part of the public record and available for anyone who would like to see them. And that's all.
Thank you, Clerk. All right, now we can begin our matters scheduled for public hearing. First is our proposed 2021 operating and capital budgets.
I don't know.
So we have one person signed up to speak on the budget tonight. That's Wanda Gilbert Coker. You will have 3 minutes.
No. Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
We need you to speak closer to the microphone? We're having trouble hearing you with the background noise.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hello?
We can barely make out what you're saying. There's a lot of background noise.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
We can barely hear you. There was a lot of background noise.
There's a lot of background noise. They can't hardly hear me.
Okay,
Hello?
we can hear you now.
You can hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Wanda Gilbert Coker, and I oppose the budget because it lacks opportunities for the Black community to engage and participate in the budgeting process. I oppose the budget because it does not have checks and balances in place. It does not have checks and balances in place for the Housing and Neighborhoods Department. Therefore, we have Fisher Street. Number 3, because it funds gentrification and not revitalization. There is no line item support for tenant eviction court, and nor is there any support for Section 8 home ownership. This budget continues to deny racial justice and upholds white supremacy and capitalism. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I should have opened the hearing and then closed the hearing. So, correct? Yes, so consider it opened, and now I'm going to close the hearing. City Attorney, do we have to take another step?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Next is the Municipal Service District. This is for downtown. We have 2 people registered to speak. That is Pam Blondin and Larry Miller. I will say beforehand that I'm ready for us to approve this. But Pam and Larry, if you would like to, I'm going to open the hearing, and if you would like to speak.
Sure, I'll go first. Thanks. I'm Pam Blondin, 101 North Bloodworth Street, Raleigh. I am owner of downtown retail store Deco Raleigh, and I'm currently the board chair for the Downtown Raleigh Alliance. I'm here tonight simply to thank you for considering our proposal to serve and partner with the city of Raleigh in the coming years. We submitted an ambitious proposal that reflects the changing needs of our community and includes new proposed strategies and specific programs for addressing equity and accessibility, chronic homelessness, stresses on downtown retail, the changing landscape of economic development, and the need for increased community engagement, as we've seen clearly demonstrated these last few days. And of course, we anticipate a demand for targeted strategies for addressing the lingering impact of the COVID crisis. We are proud of the work we do and hope that our collective passion for Raleigh will make us creative and dedicated partners for many years to come. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Pam.
Hi, this is Larry Miller. I live at 510 Glenwood Avenue, and I'm president of the Glenwood South Neighborhood Collaborative, GSNC. Our mission is to empower residents and businesses to work together to maximize the vitality and appeal of Glenwood South as a neighborhood that is attractive to businesses and residents and visitors. The president and CEO of DRA, currently Bill King, is a member of the board of GSNC. We're a community-based organization composed of volunteers and have a limited budget. DRA assists us with technical and logistical support. They help us with such things as managing our membership list and sending out newsletters. In return, we provide DRA with an active, robust connection to this important district in the Raleigh downtown community. Since we share many of the same goals, this is a beneficial arrangement for both parties. I'm going to abbreviate my comments because I had a number of examples of how we work, GSNC works with DRA. But I just want to say that in DRA, we found a perfect partner to enhance the work that GSNC performs in the Glenwood South community. They provide us with resources that our small group does not have, while we provide them with an intimate knowledge of the issues and participants in our community. We encourage the City Council to vote in favor of continuing the contract with Downtown Raleigh Alliance. I just want to add, as a postscript, I would like to state that the City of Raleigh should be thankful to have DRA as a partner. DRA, and in particular Bill King, displayed outstanding skills in organizing, coordinating, and implementing actions to provide relief to the downtown Raleigh community this past weekend. Thank you.
You did a great job this past weekend. Thank you. Any city manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Just as a reminder, this is just the public hearing portion. The approval of the contracts are folded into your budget adoption packet. So, I mean, you could indicate support, but you don't have to formally vote for it tonight. It'll be in your adoption packet.
Okay. Well, DRA has been doing a great job. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Councilor Stewart, for serving as the liaison. Okay. I will close the public hearing. Next, we go on to the Hillsborough Street Municipal Service District. Let me see. No one has signed up to speak. I will open the hearing and I will close the hearing. Next is the 5-year consolidated plan, citizen participation plan in 2020-21 annual action plan. No one has signed up to speak. I will open the hearing and close the hearing. Next, we have STC 06-2019, the West Lenore Street right-of-way. No one has signed up to speak. I will open the hearing and close the hearing. Next, we have CP 12.
Mayor?
Hold on, Mayor. Go ahead, Robin.
Oh, you need to go and have a vote on the street closing.
Okay.
And the motion.
And the rest of them are, yep, I got it.
I just want to point out that the motion needs to say that the adoption and effective date shall be consistent with the agenda item. Would
anyone like to make that that motion?
I'll do it.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Melton.
I move to adopt the West Lenore Street right-of-way street closing consistent with the agenda item.
Do we have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Branch. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously, Clerk. Next is Comprehensive Plan Amendment CP 1219. This is Kinley Street. We have one person who has signed up to speak. So I will open the hearing. Could we hear from Rynell Stevenson? Are we going to hear from staff first?
I think we should, Mayor.
Waiting on my slides to come up, but I can go ahead and start.
Yep,
Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Comprehensive Plan CP 12 is a request to extend Kinley Street on the street plan. It's citizen initiated. It would extend Kinley Street to connect to Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. That would modify the South Dawson and South McDowell interchange at Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The Planning Commission recommends approval. This was considered by the Central CAC for their agenda, but they did not hold a meeting to hold a vote. On the next slide, you can see the alignment of Kinley Street. So it currently connects to South Salisbury, just on the west side of the Performing Arts Center, and this would extend it to the south and west to Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. You can see the existing zoning, future land use map, and urban form maps on the right. On the next slide, you can see an aerial view of the site. So the folks who want to develop this site are making the request for the street extension. They do have an approved site plan that they're wanting to take action on. And you can see the ramp from Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard to McDowell Street that would be modified as a result of the extension of the street. So the controlled access to the between the two would be removed. On the next slide, you can see that this is consistent overall with the comprehensive plan. No inconsistent policies were identified. What questions could I answer for you before you hear from the applicant?
Could you take down the slide so I can see if anybody has their hands raised by them? Okay, Councillor Cox.
Yes, why didn't the CAC take a vote?
So they had initially indicated they were interested in having it on their agenda, but then that meeting was canceled because of COVID.
And so they weren't able to meet subsequently. I take it because of that right. February decision.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
They weren't able to meet subsequently because of the February decision to disband the CAC?
That decision had already been made.
Okay.
Is Councillor Martin on the phone, on here?
I've been texting with him and he is having some computer issues. I believe he is still able to hear and we're working to get him to be seen again.
Okay. A reminder that if you are not able, like if you're checking out for a minute, please ask to be excused, because otherwise if we take a vote, your vote will automatically count as a yes. But these virtual meetings are difficult enough, so just let us know what's going on. Okay, does anybody else have a question for Bynum before we bring on the applicant? Okay, I'm going to open the hearing and ask Rynell Stevenson to speak.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Rynell Stevenson. I have a presentation too that I think will be pulled up here, hopefully.
There's nobody speaking opposed to this.
Okay. I tell you, I'll hit the highlights then. How about that? So staff did a real good job of covering this, and a couple of things that I want to point out about the requested amendment is that a lot of the inspiration for it came from the Southern Gateway Corridor Study Plan. Mm-hmm. And there are a few things in there, and it mentions things like barriers and opportunity zones. It also mentions some of the issues in this area that are lack of sidewalk connectivity, bike connectivity. It mentions the interchanges as barriers and ramps and flyovers as barriers. And so, you know, what we are proposing is to modify the interchange at Dawson, McDowell, and Martin Luther King Jr. To make it more of an urban design. And we also are proposing to extend Conley Street through to intersect across from the interchange ramp onto Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And we feel this opens up a lot of connectivity and potential opportunities there for not only for development, but for pedestrian activity and bicycles as well. And it certainly allows for a more urban type of development in this area. There was also a letter written in support from city staff, Mr. Eric Lamb, that indicated, it was a letter to NCDOT that indicated the support for this particular amendment and plan and road plan, and there's some additional work to be done, but this is obviously a critical step in that process to work with NCDOT is to get this comp plan amendment completed. And, with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you all have.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, I will close the hearing. Councilor Branch?
Yes, this project is actually within my district. This is this CAC I know well, and I know if anyone had any objection or issues, they would have called me or contacted me, and I've reached out as well from time to time. I move for approval of this comp plan amendment consistent with the agenda.
Seconded by Councilor Stewart. All in favor? Opposed? So Councilor Cox is opposed, so that's 7-1. Clerk?
Mayor has,
Councilor Martin is back.
oh, is he back?
Mm-hmm.
Where?
I see him.
I'm here.
Oh, there.
Okay.
Yeah, for a minute. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Next we have rezoning Z2819, 4915 Lead Mine Road.
This is a request to rezone just under an acre from R10 with conditions to residential mixed-use 3-story height limit, also with conditions. The Northwest CAC recommends approval, as does the Planning Commission. You can see the site here at on the west side of Lead Mine, just south of Town and Country Road. Zoning in the area is largely residential, and you can see generally low density, moderate density residential surrounding. There is a church across the street. I believe that's the Greek Orthodox Church. On the next slide, you can see a couple of views of the site. So the actual topography of the site is a little bit lower than Lead Mine Road. And on the next slide, here are the proposed conditions. Residential density is limited to 14 units per acre, and outdoor sports and entertainment facilities are prohibited. On the next slide, the change in entitlement, you can see they're increasing the residential, potential total residential units modestly from 9 to 13. And the residential mixed use district also brings with it a very modest amount of office and retail entitlement that can be constructed at the ground floor corner unit at the intersection of 2 public streets. So that would be feasible at this location. On the next slide, you can see that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan overall. There were no inconsistent policies identified. What questions can I answer for you before you hear from the applicant or the public?
Anybody have any questions for Bynum? Okay, then I will open the hearing. Let's see, we have one person scheduled to speak, Diane Becker. Diane, are you there?
I am. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Diane Becker. I'm an attorney and I represent the property owner, Mark Weitzel. And I just wanted to make a couple comments real quick. The city's presentation is pretty thorough. But Mr. Weitzel has reached retirement age and he's ready to sell his property. He's gotten it under contract through his real estate broker 3 different times. All 3 contracts were terminated by the proposed buyers due to development constraints under the current zoning. And so he's seeking a change to remove some overly burdensome constraints that are there and make the property more marketable and developable. I think I have a slide presentation there. If we could put that up.
I'll just let you know that no one has signed up in opposition.
Oh, okay. Well, then we just ask that you approve it. It was approved by the CAC and it was approved unanimously by the Planning Commission. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I will close the public hearing. Sign of virtual meetings, barking dogs. Let's see, Councilor Buffkin, this is your district. Do you have anything?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any comments. I'm ready to make a motion to approve the requested rezoning when you're ready.
Please go ahead. No one has any questions.
Thank you. I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated June 2nd, 2020, contained in the agenda, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda item under recommended action.
Do we have a second? Councilor Martin. Okay. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously, clerk. Okay, next we have rezoning Z3819 on North New Hope Road in the ETJ.
This is a request to rezone a little bit over an acre from R4 to R10 with conditions. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan, but not with the future land use map. The Planning Commission recommends approval, and there was no Northeast CAC vote. This was, it did appear on the agenda, but there was no vote. As you can see, zoning in the area is largely residential, with commercial along Newbern Avenue to the south of the site. On the next slide, you can see that principal uses have been limited to allow to those allowed in the R4 district, except the daycare use. They have limited their daycare capacity to 89 enrollees, and that is really driving the desire for the case. They want to expand the daycare use that's currently on the site. On the next slide, you can see that the conditions, while they limit uses, they do not limit entitlement, and so there is an increase in the number of units allowed and a reduction in setbacks as a result of the rezoning request. On the next slide, you can see the revision to the future land use map that would be made as a result of the rezoning. So currently a low density designation on the site, and the rezoning would result in an amendment to the future land use map to change that designation to moderate density residential. On the next slide, there are a handful of consistent policies within the plan. It is consistent overall with the plan, but there are 2 inconsistent policies associated with that inconsistency of the future land use map. What questions could I answer for you before you hear from the applicant or the public?
Are there any questions? Okay. Thank you. I will open the public hearing. There's 2 people signed up to speak in support, and no one is opposed. Could we hear from Regina Williams and then Bill Gordon? Ms. Williams or Mr. Gordon, are you available?
I've unmuted Ms. Williams, but I don't see her speaking yet. I can start. Regina, are you there? Something's up with her audio. We can start with Mr. Gordon.
Okay, Mr. Gordon.
Yeah. My name is Bill Gordon, Jr. I own the design firm of Design Solutions NC, and I prepared the rezoning case for Busy Bee. I'm in support of the project because I've seen over the years the service that they provided for daycare and learning center, small age kids. Okay, and if you might notice, okay, indulge me for a second, Council and Ms. Chairman. I speak with a slight stammer, okay? And I'm telling you why I'm testifying. 3 years ago, the Monday after Easter Sunday, I was released from Duke Hospital. I suffered a stroke and an aneurysm at the same time. I also flatlined twice. When I came out the second flatline, I was in a coma for 3 weeks, and I'm so grateful to be alive.
Amen.
Hello?
Okay.
We hear you, sir.
Oh, okay, and thank you. So
Okay.
I'm in full support of the Busy Bee rezoning, and I'm so grateful for the service that they provided in the past, and with the expansion, I'm grateful for the proposed service they can provide in the future. And thank you so much for my comment.
Okay, thank you, sir. Regina Williams.
Regina, do we have you yet? Sorry, Mayor, she is here, but we can't seem to hear her.
Okay. Is there a way for her to call in?
Regina, if you can message me if you're in the chat and I can give you a call. I actually do have a phone number for you in my list if you want me to call you. I'll try that, Mayor, real quick, if that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
While she's gone, I did want to point out, whoever makes the motion, the language about effective consistent with the recommended action did not make it in this motion. So whoever makes the motion, if it's one to approve, should add that language, please.
Madam Attorney, what is that part again? You broke up.
Oh, I'm sorry. The motions, like the last, have been reading that the move to adopt the rezoning amendment, the language should also say consistent with the effective dates in the recommended action in the agenda. Most of them say it, some of them got missed.
Regina, do we have you now?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm going to get rid of your other connection and leave you with this one.
Can I start now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Regina Williams, and my position is for the rezoning of 2108 North New Hope Road. I am one of the owners of Busy Bees Learning Center, and I am also the director. I, along with my mother-in-law, Jacqueline Williams, who owns the property, carry out the day-to-day operations of the facility. We began operating as a center in 2009 after expanding from a family child care home that was started in 2016. We began operating as a center in 2009 after expanding from a family child care home. I am a mother of 5 children and 4 beautiful grands. I have a degree in early childhood education and have been in this field for more than 27 years. My husband and in-laws allowed me to start this business when I was pregnant with my youngest, who is now 14. I take great pride in being able to offer quality care at affordable prices to parents in Raleigh and the surrounding area, being able to give them the peace of mind that their child is being cared for as our own while they are able to make a living for their own families. This rezoning will allow for the expansion so the Busy Bees Learning Center will be able to accept more children and families who are in need of quality care we have built our name upon for all these years, while also being able to provide employment to a few creative, dedicated teachers longing to provide such care. Therefore, it is my hope that you will allow for the rezoning at 2108 North New Hope Road. Help us get one step closer to making our dreams a reality. Thank you for your time and consideration for this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Okay, I am going to close the public hearing. Are there any comments, or Councilor Cox?
Yes, again, I mean, well, first of all, I want to thank the two speakers that spoke in favor of this rezoning. They're obviously very passionate about this, and I do think it's a good project, but I'm very concerned that there was no CAC vote again on this project. So I'm very concerned that we're not hearing from citizens, and I want to understand, you know, why was there not a CAC vote on this project? Is it because it wasn't possible because of the CACs being discontinued?
The March meeting was scheduled. It was scheduled for the March meeting, but was canceled because of COVID.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Would someone like, okay, Councilor Branch?
Not a question, just a statement. I've passed this daycare many a times off of New Hope Road. The interesting part is the other side of the street is in Councilman Cox's district. This side is in my district, but it's in the same CAC, the Northeast CAC. The thing that I want to say is they've done a lot of great work from what I've witnessed at that location, with very little impact to traffic and things of that matter. So I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated June 2nd, 2020, containing the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment. Consistent with the dates and recommendation actions of the commission, this approval is also deemed as an amendment to the future land use map to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement.
Do we have a second? Councilor Martin? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Councilor Cox is opposed, so that's a 7-1 vote, clerk. Okay, thank you. Next, we have rezoning Z4119 Millbrook Road and North Hills Drive.
This is a request to rezone just under 8 acres from a combination of R4 and R6 to residential mixed-use 4-story height limit with a parking limited frontage and conditions, and residential mixed-use 3-story height limit with parking limited frontage and conditions. The Midtown CAC voted in December of 2019 on this case, 11 yes and 20 no, effectively a recommendation for denial. And the Planning Commission recommends approval by a split vote of 5-2. You can see that zoning in the area is largely residential. This is located just east of Shelley Lake Park, on the west side of North Hills Drive, and on either side of Millbrook Road. On the next slide, you can see the beginning of the proposed conditions. They've limited residential density to 15 units, prohibited a handful of uses, and also subjected the property on the south side of Millbrook Road to tree preservation. On the next slide, more conditions, limit on number of stories of habitable space, and limits around height in terms of non-habitable space, such as parking or mechanical equipment, and as long as that ground floor is below the elevation of the average grade of North Hills Drive. And then they have provided a common area between the subject property and property to the north would be replanted with vegetation. On the next slide, more conditions, replanting of trees along North Hills Drive, principal building setback from Shelley Lake Park of over 200 feet, and then provision for some turn lanes on North Hills Drive and Millbrook Drive to serve Mill Greens Court. On the next slide, you can see a comparison of entitlement. So they're adding a very modest office square footage here and increasing the number of units considerably in terms of unit entitlement. And then the setbacks are also reducing. On the next slide, you can see that this is consistent with the future land use map and all other relevant policies. What questions can I hear from you before you hear from the applicant and the public?
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, well, I will open the public hearing then. A reminder that this is 8 minutes per side. We do have people here speak against this project. I will start off with the applicant, Michael Birch, please.
Great. Good evening, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you. This is Michael Birch with Longleaf Law Partners. Also on tonight with me is Joe Lassiter, the developer, and then Tommy Craven and Ben Williams with Priest Craven and Associates, the engineers for the project. I will be presenting. The others are available in case there are questions. Also, I'll attempt to reserve some time to address any public comments that may occur after we present. So the purpose of this request is to permit a residential condominium project of up to 112 units. I do want to emphasize there is no non-residential space. Even that 4,000 square feet of office has now been prohibited, and that's reflected in the staff report. And I also just want to note the setback slides. Obviously, our conditions and the requirements for neighborhood transitions trump those setbacks and will require greater setbacks. These buildings, again, with our height conditions, will appear to be 3 stories above grade along North Hills Drive, picking up the possibility of 1 level of kind of underground parking as the grade slopes away stories above grade. And just a reminder that all the development will occur on the north side of Millbrook Road. We do have that condition essentially saying prohibiting any tree removal on the south side of Millbrook Road. Just to emphasize, the request is consistent with the future land use map. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan, compatible with the surrounding area, as noted in the staff report, and it's reasonable and in the public interest, given that it increases housing supply, provides housing variety in this area, and it also locates appropriately scaled density proximate to Shelley Lake Park, the city's greenway system, existing and proposed bus transit service, and roads with bike lanes on them. Next, I just want to focus on 2 primary issues that we heard throughout our process of being engaged with nearby owners, residents, stakeholders. We had 2 CAC meetings. We had our neighborhood meeting, and then at the request of Councilor Buffkin, held a second neighborhood meeting to have additional conversations, and all were well attended. 2 key issues that came up, traffic and aesthetics, both the view from the park and North Hills Drive. I'll touch on traffic if you go to the next slide. As shown on this trip generation slide, the project would only add approximately 53 total trips in the AM peak hour, about 66 total trips in the PM peak hour. So really only about an additional car per minute in that busiest part of the day. And I'll just note that these trip numbers is really only about 1/3 of what would typically trigger a TIA. So a traffic impact analysis is not required given how low the trip generation was. On the next slide, we just highlight that both Millbrook Road and North Hills Drive are well under capacity. Millbrook at 55%, North Hills with 67% with this project included. We also heard concerns from North Hills Place about getting in and out of their community across the street from the project. And even though we have very low trip generation, we have committed in a condition to restriping North Hills Drive to provide a left-hand turn into their development, as well as a left-hand turn into our development. If you go to the next slide, that again just kind of represents the possible restriping. And if you can go to the next slide after that, to touch on aesthetics. Again, a view from a park, view from North Hills Drive. So importantly, we've added a condition requiring a 215-foot building setback from the park to the larger part of the property. You'll note that there is about 110 feet wide existing tree buffer of mature trees on the park property that will remain. That is not touched at all because it's on the park property. And so the closest building is another 215 feet beyond that. And so you can see on this slide, the closest building would be 625 feet from the lake, 500 feet from the greenway, 330 feet from that tree line. And you'll note on this slide that it's about 200 feet further back from the existing townhomes to the north. These buildings will be farther back than any unit in the Lindale apartment project to the north, the closest homes in North Clift, the closest homes in Lake Park. These will be substantially set back even more. Also, we will have tree conservation on the property. We will have neighborhood transitions required that will be located between our buildings and around kind of our edges of the property that will further screen the buildings. Along North Hills Drive, Duke Energy is a part of a larger CIP project unrelated to this to enhance distribution, is relocating the power line through the middle of our site to along North Hills Drive. In recognition of this, we've added a condition requiring enhanced landscaping along North Hills Drive to put back as much as we can of that buffer. Throughout the process, we've heard about comparing what could happen under current zoning to what happened under proposed zoning, with the thought that what could happen under current zoning is less impactful. But I want to note that under current zoning, these properties could be developed without providing any tree conservation, without providing any neighborhood transitions, without providing new landscaping along North Hills Drive. These properties could be developed without providing any stormwater controls. And they could also be developed with just a minimum setback from the lake park property, and certainly without any restriping. And that's really to address an existing issue. But all of that could occur under current zoning. So we think what we are proposing is a great enhancement over what could occur under current zoning. So with that, I would like to reserve any time remaining, if possible, in order to respond to any public comments.
Okay. We will then go to John Freeman. Mr. Freeman, are you there?
I am. Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Please, we're going to reset the timer for 8 minutes. Okay, thank you. And just remember that this is 8 minutes for 4 speakers.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Please.
I am John Freeman, 812 Mill Greens Court, and I speak on behalf of residents of the many neighborhoods surrounding Shelley Lake who are opposed to this rezoning. We appreciate this opportunity to share our major concerns regarding Z4119 with you and the public, and trust that you will take actions necessary to protect our safety, the area around Shelley Lake Park, and the character of the surrounding forested neighborhoods. A major point of concern is traffic safety due to the proposed 112 units. If approved, this will create a dangerous intersection. Slide 1 shows the proposed intersection put directly across from Mill Greens Court. This would replace an already dangerous T intersection with a far more dangerous cross intersection, which would be the only access to North Hills Drive for both neighborhoods. Due to the blind curve and the blind intersection, making a left turn from either location would be even more perilous than it is today. A comprehensive traffic study is required once pro-COVID traffic conditions have returned and before rezoning approval, not afterward. If you have additional questions, please refer to the email that I sent to each of you last week. Slide 2, please. You may be unaware that a stream is located on the property. Sources tell us that it is likely jurisdictional and intermittent and therefore subject to the new buffer rules, 50-foot buffers, and diffuse flow requirements, since it appears on the bound Wake County Soil Survey. Action needs to be taken to protect this stream. The Planning Commission's recommendation for this rezoning was a split vote. Not all members saw the rezoning as being a good thing. A development of this scale and density was never intended for this location based on the city's 2030 comprehensive plan, the growth framework map, the future land use map, and the transit map. It is an island development with no services within walking distance except the park, and that required continued vehicle dependency and greatly increasing our carbon footprint. The proposed rezoning is in a residential suburban area of mixed housing choice located next to a significant public park with a maximum building height of 2.5 stories. Removing the mature trees and natural setting as a result of clear cutting, infill, and regrading to place the only 4-story buildings in our neighborhood on a high ridge next to Shelley Lake does not preserve the natural environment, but it will negatively impact the park's viewshed and reduce wildlife habitat. The negative impact of this 15 units per acre residential development will be felt by more citizens of Raleigh than by those benefiting from the close proximity to the park. The established character and affordability of our forested neighborhoods will be severely altered. Current R6 zoning is consistent with the vision and themes of the 2030 comprehensive plan and is supported by both the growth framework map and the future land use map. R6 provides expanding housing choice and increases affordable housing density with the least amount of negative impact to the surrounding neighborhoods and Shelley Lake Park. We oppose any rezoning of this site. We know that this property ultimately will be developed, but we trust that you will ensure that it is done thoughtfully and that it represents nature and that the end result is in harmony with the community around it. Remember, we physically live here, and if rezoning is approved, we and the park visitors are the ones who will be negatively impacted every day. Thank you in advance for denying this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Carol Brown.
Yes, I'm Carol Brown, president of the Homeowners Association at North Hills Place. The area around Shelley Lake Park and North Hills Drive is rich with mature trees. That is its special charm. It's an oasis of green inside the city limits. When the power easement is moved to North Hills Drive, with lines buried or not, it will necessitate the removal of all of the trees in its path, and large trees will not be allowed to be replacing those that are lost. The resulting 30-foot wide, stripped bare space with view of the only 4-story buildings anywhere around and a paved parking lot will destroy the character and beauty of this deeply wooded area, as well as destroying mature trees which serve as food, shelter, and nesting places for the creatures that call the Shelley Lake area home. To preserve the character and quality of surrounding neighborhoods and to protect the complex ecosystem around Shelley Lake, rezoning should not be allowed. One more thing. Condition number 8 of 215 feet cannot possibly be met with the lower property that abuts Shelley Lake. It's simply not wide enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Gwen Anderson.
I go through my slides pretty fast. Are they prepared to show my slides? Gwen Anderson at Pine Top Circle Ridgelock Townhomes. These are not my slides. Here we are. The Save Shelley Lake meetup has info posted on preserving green space. Slide 2, the sale of the major parcel already closed. 1.29 million does not reflect the value at the current R6 zoning. My slides are not being advanced. 2, thank you. You can see green area around the lake and denser building at the right at Six Forks. 3, low density zoning creates wildlife buffers that support natural setting. I don't have slide 3 yet. Slide 4. Thank you. The parcel in question has been built to R1 standards for decades, creating positive externalities for the park. 4, the 2030 plan map suggests moderate density north of Millbrook. 5, which includes current R6 zoning. Although moderate goes too high for park areas, does RX belong here? 6, no, it does not. It belongs at Six Forks. That's where the transit is. There needs to be a gradual transition R6 to R10 and RX. Give the public park access at the north side of this parcel. 7, we see in the comprehensive plan. 8, discussion of unintended consequences. 9, of tall buildings. 10, and suitability to the surrounding area as well as adverse impacts on the character of a park setting neighborhood. This is a 2-story area. 11, the UDO purpose and intent. 12, describes the setting and environmentally responsible development, which has been misdefined in this case. 13, park borders are sensitive to externalities. This is where past benefits start to convert to external costs. 13, please. Please move fast. Please move my slides. Think of this as a, oh, here, they're already clear cutting at Lynn Road. Next slide, please. Okay, I missed a slide, but think of this as a multi-tiered cake. It makes no difference to add another layer of fudge and icing, and no one's ever gonna notice 200 marshmallows stuffed underneath. Okay, the city of Raleigh needs a menu with an R6 Parkside salad. This petition already has, since last Thursday, it now has over 3,700 signatures. Around half were from Raleigh. And these people do not agree, that your public does not agree with your 2030 guidelines or dense development here. 16. Slides, next slide, please. Notification within 500 feet of the park excludes park goers, and Raleigh has 1.2 million population who need recreational space. This is not the place for a few to do their laundry and taxes. 17. Shelley Lake does not want to be Lake Lynn, overdeveloped. Eagles don't want to live at Lake Lynn. 18. Pay attention to the symbol over your head and be creative, like green builders world over. With permeable pavers and vertical forests. Where are my slides? Raleigh has a local climate, low density canopied areas.
Gwen?
Yes?
I believe your time is up.
That didn't go too well, did it, on online with the slides?
There were quite a few slides for staff to manage. We got the gist of what you were saying.
Okay.
And you can always follow up with an email if you wish.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now, I have a little bit of a dilemma here. Is Paul Brandt on the phone? Is he waiting to speak?
Yes, I'm waiting to speak.
Okay. All the time has been used, but Mr. Brandt, you've been waiting. So I am going to add a minute. Can you say what you need to say in that amount of time?
Mayor, I am supporting this application.
You're supporting. Okay. Well, then you have plenty of time because those in support have time left. How much time is left on that? Could we see that on the clock? How much time did Mr. Birch leave? Is that accurate? A minute and 22 seconds? Okay, Mr. Brandt, you have a minute and 22 seconds.
Can I have the additional minute that you indicated?
No, because that would have been for the other group. I was trying to be kind.
All right. And may I ask a question before I start as far as whether the council received my input by email? It was sent to both the planning director and to the clerk as per the request.
Okay, Mr. Brandt, could you speak up a little, please?
Yes, I mean, is that any better?
I received Mr. Brandt's comment, but since he had signed up to speak, I assume he was going to read them, but I do have his whole comments.
And you can share that with us.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Brandt, we're going to start the clock.
All right, you heard the other side. Most of them were speaking against this development. They claim that they're on their websites that they put up that 118 acres of Shelley Lake could be turned into commercial businesses and retail shopping with tall condos. You saw a picture of what they promote as the result surrounding the park, as well as destroying the existing trees that are the habitat of the bald eagles living in the park. And therefore the eagles are going to resort to eating cats to survive. That's pictures that they have. They have posted pictures and dialogue clearly meant to scare people into believing that the park itself is the target of Z4119 rezoning. Save Shelley Lake Park is their mantra. And I included several exhibits in my input to you that you can see what they suggest. Here are the facts. 120 feet of trees adjacent to the soccer field will remain, and it's on an elevated slope 28 feet high. The developer's already said he's going to add another 200 plus feet to the separation, which would protect more trees. The eagles are in no danger as they're nearly a half a mile, that's 3,200 feet away from this development. And they have all of the 118 acres of Shelley Lake Park to enjoy. The case clearly places restrictions on the proposed use to remain as residential development to prevent commercialization. Given the need for affordable quality housing, it is better and higher use of the properties in question to have condominium style homes that minimize the building footprints and allow more trees and green space to be preserved. As a former Raleigh CAC chairman, I'm very familiar with the role of neighborhood advocates and the importance of raising awareness to bad development and that reduces the value of personal and public property. However, I do not believe that the neighborhood advocates should be creating a false narrative and distributing inaccurate and misleading information. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Brandt. Is our clock working tonight? Because it keeps getting stuck.
Madam Mayor, I think they're stopping the clock when their time is up.
I believe that's, Mayor, if I could, I believe that's right. What you're seeing, it was 8 seconds over, I believe.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, both sides have run out of time. So I am going to, Councilor Buffkin, this is your district. I can close the public hearing and we can discuss this.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to make a brief statement, but I do recommend that you close the hearing.
Okay, I will close the public hearing then. Mr. Buffkin?
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, you have heard a sample of the conversation that we've been having in North Raleigh about this proposed development for about 6 months now. This is a special place, a special location next to a wonderful park property that I know so well. I bought my first house on Dixon Drive, just about a quarter mile from Shelley Lake Park. And I've walked the lake trail thousands of times. I'm very sensitive to the concerns for the future of the lake that you've heard or talked about tonight. And there are some traffic challenges here. That's a legitimate concern. And there's a number of other complicated issues involved in this case and a high level of interest among the citizens and the residents that live around there. So I'm going to ask the council to carefully consider what you've heard tonight and reflect on it. The people who have spoken here, the people who are interested in this case, feel free to reach out to the members of council, express your views. And I'm going to ask the council to defer decision on this case until the June 16 meeting to give us an opportunity to consider all we've heard and give careful consideration to whether to approve or deny this case.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cox?
Yes, when we hold these hearings, we give each side 8 minutes, and that gives the appearance of basically equity between the two sides. Truth of the matter is that we've heard from an enormous outcry against this rezoning, and there's an online petition with over 3,000 signatures. I don't believe all those people have been duped into believing about eagles eating cats. I do believe that these people have a vision and an expectation for their community. And if we are going to be a council that listens to our citizens and considers their opinions and their vision of the future of their community, then we have to take that seriously. And so we can hold this at the table, but my vote will be for the citizens of this community. And if the vote were held tonight, I would vote against this rezoning.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is rezoning Z5419 on Kelly Austin Drive. We have 2 people signed up.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mayor. Do we need a formal action to delay that vote to hold the case over for our June 16 meeting?
I don't think so, do we?
Okay.
I'm looking at the city attorney.
I would vote on it.
Vote on it?
Yes, I was trying to unmute myself. Yes, I'd go ahead and vote to close the hearing and defer the consideration till the June 16th meeting.
Okay, well, I've closed the meeting, so if you would like to make a motion, Councillor Buffkin?
Yes, I move that the council defer decision in this matter until the June 16 meeting.
Do we have a second? Councillor Stewart? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, the 7-1 vote with Councillor Cox in opposition. Clerk, thank you. All right, now we have Z5419, as I said, Kelly Austin Drive. We have 2 speakers sign up in support, and now we'll get a brief staff report. Or maybe we won't.
I think we're just having some technical difficulties. Here we go. Right, so this is a request to rezone just under 2 acres from industrial mixed use, 3-story height limit with a SHOD to commercial mixed use, 5-story heights with that same, with conditions and that same SHOD. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan overall, but not the future land use map. The Planning Commission recommends approval unanimously. This was presented to the ECAC, but the voting meeting was canceled due to COVID. If you would go back, you could see that zoning in the area is whatever. Could you go back 2 slides, please? Thank you. Great. So zoning in the area is mixed. You have a combination of residential mixed use, commercial zoning, conservation zoning, as well as industrial mixed use zoning, all most of that subject to the SHOD, which is related to the I-440 Beltline to the northeast. On the next slide, you can see an aerial view of the site. So we're just north of Wake Med and just kind of south of Tower Shopping Center. You can see the St. David's School playfields to the north. On the next slide, you can read a summary of conditions. They have prohibited a variety of uses, limited the amount of parking between the building and Kelly Austin Drive to approximate frontage. They have provided for a building entrance facing Kelly Austin Drive and also for pedestrian access to Kelly Austin Drive. On the next slide, you can see the comparison of zoning entitlements. So the residential density is increasing, the office and retail square footage is increasing, and the number of hotel rooms is also increasing, and that really is the motivation for the request. I believe the applicant intends to construct a hotel. On the next slide, you can see that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the urban form map, a handful of policies there. On the next slide, more consistent policies, and also a note that this is inconsistent with the future land use map. On the next slide, you would see that the current designation of medium density residential would be modified to community mixed use if you do approve the rezoning. What questions could I answer for you before you hear from the applicant and the public?
Do we have any questions for Bynum? Councillor Cox?
Again, the CAC didn't vote on this. Is that because of COVID again?
Yes, sir, that's right.
All right.
Councillor Branch?
I read where they had one meeting that ECAC did where it was presented, but their second meeting was where they were going to vote. Do we know if we have any notes or minutes from that first meeting or what the context was?
I don't believe that there was much discussion from much resident comment about this case at the first CAC presentation.
Okay.
Okay, I am going to open the hearing, and we have two people signed up to speak. One is Randy Herman, the other Deborah Ford, and there is no opposition to this case. So, Randy Herman.
Thank you, Mayor Baldwin and members of council. I'm not going to take up any of your time with slides. I think that would just slow us down. But to answer a couple of the questions that have already been asked, this matter initially came before the East CAC in January. We had generally good feedback at that meeting. And the main question that that members of the community were interested in was about jobs, the number of jobs that we expected to provide, and whether there would be hiring preference for local residents, which we said that we did intend to do. East CAC only held meetings every other month, so the following meeting was scheduled for March, and that meeting was canceled at the last moment due to COVID. Deborah Ford, who is here to speak tonight, was the chair of the East CAC. We have subsequently met with her to address any concerns that that other residents had expressed to her, and she now wants to speak in favor of the rezoning. To give context, as staff said, our intention is for this property to be developed as a hotel, even though it is about 2 acres in total because of the shod overlay setbacks and because of existing tree buffers and other restrictions on the lot. There's only about 1 acre of developable land on the lot. Because of that, when we initially developed a site plan with a 3-story hotel, we were only able to get about 45 hotel rooms in that building, which would not be feasible for the project. It wouldn't be a profitable project given the amount of development work that has to be done on the site. So basically what we're requesting is to change it from 3 stories to 5 stories, which just gets us up to about 60 total hotel rooms. Making the project profitable. Property owner is a hotel developer who has previously developed hotels in Charlotte. This will be his first project in the Triangle. He is partnering with Marriott, so it'll be a Marriott branded hotel, probably a Fairfield Inn. This property is located quite close to Wake Med, and so one of the main targets that we see for the project would be family members of patients and also medical professionals who need housing near to Wake Med. It's right on the Newbern BRT route. There won't be a stop right at this property, unfortunately, because of its proximity to 440, but it should be, the closest BRT stop should be within walking distance of the site, and so it should be easy to get to and from the hotel to Wake Med or to downtown We also expect to have some business visitors. There really isn't a major national Marriott branded hotel anywhere in this part of the city, and so we think it'll be a benefit. And we're anticipating it'll create about 30 full-time jobs.
Okay, thank you. Could we now have Deborah Ford speak?
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Ms. Deborah Ford, former ECAC Chair, 2400 Derby Drive. Now, let me clear up some things that have been spoken tonight. Number one, the meeting that was canceled March 16th was not canceled because of the COVID. It was canceled because of the action that was taken with the council, some of the council members, should I say, February the 4th. So the next thing I know, I was receiving emails stating that no, we had our meetings at a city facility, so no, they couldn't be there. No, the police sent me an email, they couldn't be there. So there was no sense in having the meeting. Other than that, I would have had that meeting. Now, I spoke with Mr. Herman and the person that he is that he referenced, Mr. Venkata. We had a virtual meeting by the phone, and I had a couple of questions which Mr. Herman just answered pretty much. I asked, had they gotten up with Wake Med as far as, having the patients, or I know he said the staffing as well, and what would the cost be for that if it was patients or staff? More so the patients, because if you're at a hospital and you're already traumatized because you got a family member there or family members there, then you don't need an additional cost. And so he couldn't give me a definite answer because yet they have not gotten the vote to be able to rezone from 3 to 5 stories. I also asked, would some of the rooms be left for staff or patients that people that came that were patients of the hospital, and he couldn't give me an answer on that one either. Now, as far as where it is, I think it is located pretty good where you won't have to be concerned with maybe somebody getting hit by a car or getting struck or hit by a bus, So, but I did ask him or tell them if they would, had they made any connection with BRT and see about BRT being able to make the right and into Kelly Austin and then going to the hotel and then coming on back out, and I don't know if they've gotten with them on that or not. Other than that, that was pretty much what concerned, and like he said, I was not present at the January meeting due to illness. And so once again, the March meeting was supposed to be March 16th. And it was only 2 CACs that was to have meetings that week, which was the same week that was given the last week of the CACs. So it was East and South. So that, other than that, they would not have been canceled because people were interested. Now, let me say this. I have my name down to speak on Z520. Do you want me to continue on that now or wait until that comes up?
No, ma'am, you would wait until that comes up.
Okay. All right. Well, as I am in favor, I am in support of this after speaking with Mr. Herman and Mr. Venkata. I think it would be, plus it would be one of the, I hate to say better hotels in the area, because there are quite a few hotels in this area. Most of them are on the other side of 440, and we have one, maybe two over here on this side. and they have become drug infested, crime infested, prostitution. So I can understand why Wake Med approached Mr.
Ms. Ford,
Herman.
your time is up.
Okay.
It is.
And by the way, Kelly has two E's, because when I did connect on try to sign up for it, it wouldn't let me take it with the proper spelling. So it's Kelley.
Okay,
thank you,
ma'am. We'll be hearing from you in a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Now we have, let's see, I am going to close the hearing. Any questions, comments? No, Branch?
All right. If there's no other questions or comments, one thing I want to say is this is an example of a developer working with, the community, and having someone from the community come and speak on behalf. And I hope other developers on this project and the next project take note going forward. With that said, I do go back so I can read this appropriately. I do move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated June 2nd, 2020, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda items under recommendation action. This approval is also deemed an amendment to the future land use map to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement.
Second.
Is that Councillor Cox who seconded that? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously, Clerk. The next is Z520, 1950 New Bern Avenue. We know that we're going to be hearing from Deborah Ford again, and Molly Stewart will start things off once we get a brief report from Bynum, and then I will open the public hearing.
Thank you. This is a request to rezone just under 5 acres from RX and office mixed use with a 3-story height limit and conditions to a unified district of residential mixed use with a 4-story height limit, a green frontage, and conditions. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan overall, but not with the future land use map. The Planning Commission recommends approval. There's no official recommendation from RHDC or the East AC. And it is located in the Longview Gardens National Register Historic District. There's no regulatory control there, but it is a designated contributing structure in the National Register District. You can see that there's a fair amount of residential zoning nearby, and also some heavy industrial and commercial mixed use nearby as well. On the next slide, you can see the site in question. So this is the Milner Presbyterian Church site. So you can see the church building on the site, and the King Charles neighborhood to the north of New Bern Avenue, and the Longview Shopping Center on the east side of King Charles Road. On the next slide, a summary of the conditions. So they have prohibited a handful of uses. They have specified a particular landscape along New Bern Avenue, made some provisions for the existing grave site on the property, and also made a provision addressing provision of affordable housing on the site. And then on the next slide, one final condition, some documentation of the church structure in the event of demolition, which is very likely. On the next slide, just a comparison of entitlements. So you can see the residential maximum number of units is going up significantly. The office square footage allowed is going down substantially. So again, just that corner unit on the ground floor at corner of two intersection of 2 public streets, and also a reduction in the retail square footage allowance. On the next slide, you can see that this is consistent with a number of policies in the comprehensive plan, including the urban form map. And on the next slide, there are a handful of inconsistent policies largely related to preservation of that contributing structure, and some issues to do with the future land use map inconsistency. On the next slide, you can see the change that would result on the future land use map as a result of the rezoning. So that institutional designation would be removed in favor of a medium density residential designation, which is comparable to the property to the west, which is locally known as Duplex Village. What questions could I answer for you before you hear from Ms. Stewart and other members of the public?
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I'm going to open the hearing. Molly Stewart.
Mayor Baldwin, this is Molly Stewart, Morningstar Logger. I just wanted to share a little bit of the background of this project as well as some of the responses to the concerns that we did hear as we did our outreach process. The Milne Memorial Presbyterian Church was an active church until last year when the congregation decided to disband, and then the property reverted to the Presbytery of New Hope. And the former congregation, along with the Presbytery, shared a desire to devote the site to affordable housing for seniors. And they reached out to DHIC based on their track record. And that track record is fairly impressive. They've been providing affordable housing for 45 years. They've developed 44 affordable apartment communities, and they've never sold a property. So they stay in place once they've done this. The proposed project would add approximately 150 new affordable housing units along the planned New Bern BRT line. While we did our outreach process, we did hear some community concerns at our initial ECAC meeting, and as well as our meeting with the Raleigh Historic Development Commission. And the community in particular had a concern about the green frontage along New Bern Avenue. And we had already proposed a green frontage there, which entails a 20 to 50 foot building setback. But we added to our conditions additional landscaping in that area just to increase that green feeling that is there today. And then in response to the RHDC, they had some concerns. In particular, the grave of Henry Milner is there along King Charles. And we've added a condition that grave site will remain in place, and as well as the documentation of the existing sanctuary building in photographs. The plans for that building, by the way, are in the NCC archive. So those are already available. Overwhelmingly, we've generally heard support for this project, aside from these concerns that we were able to address. So thank you, and we'll be available for questions.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Deborah Ford.
Former ECAC Chair, 2400 Derby Drive. She pretty much answered all the questions that were asked from some of the community that did get in touch with me. As far as I don't know if he was Mr. Milner or who he was, but his grave is on that site, and the community was concerned about that. The setback, like she stated, from the New Bern, and I guess maybe on the other side too, of King Charles and New Bern. Let's see. Longview Gardens, they were concerned about landscaping and keeping the historical value to the property. And I don't know who it was that I emailed, I can't remember now, but they stated, sent me an email back stating that they would keep as much history from that property as they could upon building the units. I must say Miss Yvette Holmes from DHIC has always been in connection with us, and she is excellent. She does more than her job. She needs a pat on the back many days. And she did make contact with me. I made contact with her. Let's see. The property setback, I told you about that. Okay, the historic, I told you about that. One of the things that I wanted to say, because this property is scheduled to be used, built for 150 seniors or low-income people. We need that because in this area right now, there is so much gentrification going on. Just down the street from me, a house for $550,000, and I get mail, calls, people asking me, do I want to sell my house? I ask them, do you see a for sale sign out there? If you don't see a for sale sign, it's not for sale. So with that going on, what DHIC does, it will be welcomed because we need it. We need it. So at that, I say, you know, I am in support. The community is in support. And I'm sure there are many people that will find out about it are definitely in support of this going forward. Thank you. You all be blessed and have a good night.
Thank you, Ms. Ford, for putting some smiles on our faces. Did a very nice job there. Thank you. As I said, there is no opposition, so I am going to close the hearing. Councilor Branch, this is your district.
Yeah, this project is a well-needed project. Senior housing on a BRT line in an area that is seeing rapid changes with home prices going up. Seems like every second. So I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated June 2nd, 2020, containing the agenda material, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda items under recommended action. This approval is also deemed an amendment to the future land use map to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement.
Second.
Councilor Stewart seconded that. I will say before we vote that Deborah Ford is right. Vet Holmes deserves a pat on the back. She does great work, as does DHIC, and the church's involvement in this has been magnificent. This is a great project and really excited to move forward. So with that, all in favor? I know no one's opposed to this. So yes, unanimous, clerk. And now we have Z620, 3600 2604 South Saunders Street.
This is a request to rezone just over an acre and a half from commercial mixed use 3-story height limit with parking limited frontage to the same but without the frontage, and the Planning Commission recommends approval. You can see that there's a lot of commercial zoning in this area. We're at the southwest corner of South Saunders and Carolina Pines. On the next slide, you can see an aerial view of the site. So you can see some residential to the west, also to the east, but that commercial corridor along South Saunders. On the next slide, summary of conditions. So they're providing for an amenity area with at least 15 seats between the principal building at Carolina Pines Avenue, providing specifying materials for the building facade, specifying the location of ice and vending machines on the south-facing wall of the principal building, so basically away from the intersection, and then specifying the location of the pump canopy for the gas station, and the dimensions of that and how that relates to the South Saunders Street right-of-way. On the next slide, you can see the change in entitlement is negligible because they're just removing the frontage, but it does affect the setbacks, the front setback. The minimum front setback decreases significantly. On the next slide, you can see that this is consistent overall with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. On the next slide, the one identified inconsistent policy is inconsistency with the urban form map and pedestrian-friendly development. And that is all I have. If you have questions about this case, before you hear from the applicant, I would be happy to take them now.
Do we have any questions? Okay, there are no questions. We have 2 people who have signed up to speak in favor, no one opposed. Kimberly Strona and Hayes Finley. Can we hear from Kimberly first?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kimberly Sternad. I am the Speedway Project Manager for this project. I just wanted to thank everyone tonight for hearing our case. And if you have any questions, I'm actually going to let Hayes speak first. She's got a little a presentation, I believe. And then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Yes, good evening. So I'm presenting on behalf of Speedway, and the staff has already done a great job of giving the overview, and so I will try to be very brief and just touch on a few things. It is, as staff said, this is consistent with the comp plan and the future land use plan. And we disagree slightly on the urban form plan consistency statement, which I'll touch on briefly. But I would like to just mention why we are asking this request. And we can skip to slide 5. That's it. This is the current conditions of the site. There is a seafood and chicken restaurant on the northern parcel, and there's currently a Speedway store and with fueling stations on the southern right corner there. It does not have presently a entrance facing South Saunders Street. There are 2 entrances on either side. And as you can see, there's a lot of pavement and just dead space in the back, which has prompted Speedway to want to update and remodel and make it a more modern design. And that their plans are to remove the chicken and seafood restaurant, add an outdoor seating space, put a canopy along South Saunders Street with fueling stations, and then put a separate building store further back and more central in the property. And there will be landscaping added per the UDO. It will be a safer, prettier space with better movement and circulation. And one of the conditions is to have the building be a nice brick. It'll be much more pleasing to the eye. And we can move to the next slide. So the reason for our rezoning request is just to remove the parking limited designation, which currently has setbacks that prevent us from having a canopy and a building set back further. So the canopy out front under this parking limited, that is not allowed. And the neighborhood meeting actually expressed a desire for this, these improvements to increase the visibility on the property for pedestrians and cars using the fueling station. Next slide. This is a picture when I say canopy. This is what I mean. This is a property that Speedway has done in Alabama. And you can see the building is set back a little bit. The store is set back a little bit from the canopy. And next slide. This is the actual store with the brick masonry that we're talking about. And Speedway has a great reputation, and they've done several of these projects across the country, and they are looking forward to redeveloping the site that they are currently own and are operating, and making it a much more user-friendly and aesthetically pleasing site for the neighborhood. So next slide. Just quickly addressing the urban form plan, the transit is actually proposed for South Wilmington Street, and the corridor touches just the bottom edge of the property at issue here. Next slide. So if we zoom in, you can see that corner there is really about 100 square feet, and it's actually all planned to be in the dedicated right-of-way. So none of the actual development will be in that corridor. But that being said, we are currently planning to have increased pedestrian access to the entrance. The entrance to the building will be facing South Saunders Street, which is generally provisions that are required with the parking limited designation. So some of these things will be already incorporated. So ultimately, this project will improve the site aesthetically and functionally, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended it. So if there are any questions, Kimberly and I are happy to address them.
Okay, we have a couple of questions here. Councilor Knight. You're muted.
Can you hear me? So just a question on the last slide of the city presentation. It may have been on yours too, Hayes. Why was it came up inconsistent with the pedestrian friendly development? Is it, because it's a gas station, or is it because is there a sidewalk issue in there? That's the problem.
So they're removing the frontage, which specifies a couple of things. Frontage regulation addresses sign regulations, so limits the size of signs and tries to make them more pedestrian friendly. Requires a pedestrian facing entrance between the building and the public right of way. And then also specifies a build to. And so the conditions as they have written them, they very closely mimic the frontage with all except the build to, which they're using their conditions. They're specifically calling out the canopy as the build to element of their construction project, which is not really a building in terms of what a pedestrian might want to walk to, right? If I'm a pedestrian approaching the gas station, I probably don't want to go to the pump. I may, if I have a gas can, but more likely I want to go in and buy a pack of gum or, a candy bar. So that's why it's hitting the pedestrian-friendly policy as inconsistent.
I don't understand. So is it because it's not close to the road, right, or to where you'd enter as a pedestrian?
Right. So by removing the frontage, they're removing the expectation that the building would be close to the street and would be easily accessible by foot.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Cox.
I had essentially the same questions as Councilor Knight about the pedestrian condition. It says the gas pump canopy shall be no more than 100 feet from South Saunders Street right away. So that means everything's going to be moved closer to South Saunders Street. Is that correct?
Well, they're specifying how the canopy will relate to the street, but they have not specified how the building will relate to the street.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we want less than 50%. The width of the canopy shall be no less than 50% of the property frontage on South Saunders Street right away. So how big of a sign can they have there?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Signage. How big of a sign can they have there? You say they're getting rid of the sign, pedestrian-oriented sign.
So your question is, how big could the sign be without the frontage regulation?
Right.
We'd have to look to somebody in the room with me that has a code in front of them. I'm not going to be able to answer that on the fly. I apologize.
And I guess the question is, how big is the signage under the frontage? That's correct. Yeah.
I believe parking limited would limit them to ground signs only.
Okay.
And then without that, in the commercial mixed use district, I believe they could have a pole mounted sign.
Pole mounted sign. Okay.
Mr. Bowers is helping me. He's looking up the code right now. Mr. Knight, maybe we could go ahead and hear your question while Mr. Bowers is looking for information.
I think Councilor Martin, did you have a question before you, or you may go ahead and go with what? I just looking at the photos. It looks like there is a sidewalk that runs along the whole side of the Saunders Street side of the facility. Is there going to be a sidewalk that runs along the Carolina Pines Avenue side of the facility? It does not look like there's one currently, if I'm looking at this correctly.
My understanding is that they would have to implement sidewalk on the Carolina Pines frontage to complete development.
Okay. Thank you.
So in the commercial mixed-use district, they can have almost every type of sign, with the exception of an off-premise sign, which is akin to a billboard. And then the sizes, so that would be wall signs, ground signs, low profile, medium profile, basically any kind of sign they want. And then there are limits on size. So the high profile sign, for example, is limited to 100 square feet, but that would be prohibited with the frontage.
Hey, Councilor Martin, you had a question?
Sure, thank you. This is in District D, and this is dating me a bit because it was the first rezoning meeting that I had after I was elected on December 4th, and I was very nervous to have the meeting, and that feels like it was years ago at this point. And I remember continually going through the various questions with the applicant and reviewing everything. And so I'm not surprised that folks have questions about this. It is a little, it's not a standard kind of, like it's a gas station. I mean, it's certainly changing. What I would offer to folks that are looking at this the first time is that if you've driven that recently, while there are other gas stations along that corridor, and while we're thinking about what that corridor becomes in the future, there's no right there within that premise of where that's going. There isn't really a gas station that has that sort of, and I don't want to use destination because that sounds so American-like, as having like a destination gas station. But the gas stations along that corridor are very small and tight and hard to get into, out of, and back onto South Saunders with traffic and if they're full. And this acquisition of the land next to it, expanding and offering more store space, I think is just an added amenity for the neighborhoods adjacent, but also for the traffic that frequents that corridor as well. So I'm certainly in favor, happy for folks to keep answering questions. I just wanted to offer that context, and will make a motion for approval at the appropriate time.
Councilor just add that could I just say the development there does not comply with the current zoning. So the development predates the zoning that was applied as part of the remapping. So it's not meeting the requirements of the frontage currently, and they're rezoning basically to expand the existing use. So the policies that are triggering there are technicalities that aren't really being met now.
Councilor Cox.
What are the recommendations of the Southern Gateway Plan for this area?
I would have to go back and look at the staff report, but I believe it's consistent with the plan generally in terms of the base use, but the frontage is...
We're making a decision without knowing anything. And it's a gas station next to a transit corridor. And it's less environmentally friendly with pole-mounted signs.
Okay. Councilor Branch.
So I've actually had the privilege of actually having a conversation with the previous counselor for this district that worked on this project, and believes this is a good project to move forward. I think I'm also one of the few people that can remember that corner store, that corner space used to be a KFC many moons ago. As times have changed in this project, based on the last diagram, we see that it's really right on the edge of the corridor study. It's that corner part. I really believe this is a project that we can move forward. And again, like I said, with me having a conversation with the previous counselor who believes this is a good project, and a current counselor for this district believes this is a good project, I will be supporting this project.
Are there any more comments or questions?
I would like to just address some of the questions raised. The South Saunders Street is, I think it's 6 lanes. Carolina Pines has a bus station stop on it. And as part of, because this predates the UDO or the current land use for the site, that it's really going to be a drastic improvement, and they're going to add sidewalks, add landscaping, which is not there now. And the intent is to have the pedestrian access be from Carolina Pines and not really encourage pedestrian access to South Saunders Street, because that is such a major street. It just makes more sense. It's right by the bus stop. You can get off at the bus stop, walk over, sit on the picnic table, and go to the store if you need to grab some things. So I would just emphasize that even though we're removing the parking limited designation, it will actually be better for pedestrian access.
Okay, Councilor Martin.
I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated June 2nd, 2020, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment consistent with the effective date set forth in the recommended action in the agenda item.
Do we have a second? Councilor Melton was up, hand was up first. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, the vote was unanimous, clerk. Okay. That is the last item on our agenda for this evening. I just wanted to mention, today was, we did something that we all talked about doing when we ran for office, and that was moving forward a housing affordability bond, $80 million, historic for the city of Raleigh. This is a big step forward, helping us keep people in their neighborhoods, allowing them to repair their homes, allowing single moms and others to buy their first homes with the first-time homeowners program. We put more of an emphasis on housing for 30% AMI and less, so our most vulnerable citizens. And this will also enable us to build affordable housing in the future by purchasing land on transit lines. This was, I don't want this to be overlooked. This was a major step forward in helping people build, we keep talking about equity, and, this is actually taking action in that step. So really proud of what we accomplished today. And I want to thank all of you for helping us move that forward. So thank you. And I want to thank the staff as well.
Thank you for your leadership, Mayor, in pushing us to get it done, and for pushing staff to get it done.
Thank you. So here we are at the close of the meeting. This has been a very tough few days for our city. I think it's really important that all of us continue to work together, and we're going to have disagreements, but we all need each other right now, because we have to make some significant steps forward in the upcoming months to address issues that are a concern in our community. So thank you, everyone. And I guess we will be on a very long call, I'm assuming, on Thursday, very long virtual meeting on Thursday. But thank you, everyone. Again, thank you to the staff, and thank everybody for their hard work. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.